Well, I'm very excited today on the Catholic Money Show to welcome this guest to our show. I think you're really going to be interested in what we have to talk about here today. He is the founder of The Art of Living, marriage retreats, mentoring, works with men as well. From Lafayette, Louisiana, he's been married 25 plus years with 5 kids. He's host of The Paul George Show and author of the book Holy Grit. Please welcome to the Catholic Money Show, Paul George.
Jonathan, great to be with you, man. How's
Thank
Omaha?
You. It's good. It's not as cold as it used to be, so that's a plus.
Yeah, that is good. I live in the South, so it's never cold. So we're good down here.
Yeah, that must be nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show today. So you wrote this book called Holy Grit, and it's through some of the topics in that I hope to at least use as a jumping off point in our conversation today, about finances, about family finances, about our role as men to work together with our wives as a team to handle this. I know a lot of our listeners, a lot of our students, a lot of our members find themselves in a situation where, the wife finds us, she's feeling the stress of the finances in the relationship. She finds Wallet Win. She's looking to sign up, or she already did. She's trying to get the husband on board, and he's not coming. He's not interested at all. Maybe he sees it as some sort of an attack or a slight on him. Maybe there's a little bit of a feeling, at least this was for me, a feeling of a little bit of a failure for letting us get in this spot. On the other side, we've got guys who then, oh, don't worry. I know I got this book, or I got this YouTube guy, or whatever it is. I got all these little sneaky little strategies where we're going to trade this and do this. And it's probably way too complicated, but it's this attraction, just like kind of this slick Rick, figure it all out, have all the plans, and kind of be above some of this fundamental stuff. And so I guess it's a long introduction to the question, but just a jumping off point here is, what is maybe Holy Grit? How does that play into who we are as men? And then maybe we'll find our way to the finances.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great introduction. I mean, I see this all the time in the couples we work with, and even in our own marriage, for Gretchen and I, with finances. But ultimately, that the issue really isn't finances. It's the underlying issues that sort of evolve under there, right? And that begin to surface within the man and the woman, and there becomes maybe some division, or they're not on the same page. The genesis of Holy Grit was the reality that for us as men, particularly, we're attracted to being tough and gritty. Not only that, we're created for it. God created us to do hard things and to do tough things. And yet, if that's all we're created for, we're left real empty. If it was just hard work and just figuring things out and just grinding and being tough, why do we still have this longing for more, right? And the reality is that we're created not only to be gritty, tough men to do hard things, but we're created for God and to be holy. And those things, when merged together, we really find our purpose and our meaning. And yet when they're lived in compartments, they're compartmentalized, we struggle as men. And so the book is about merging those two things together, looking through the lenses of these amazing masculine saints that have gone before us, that have lived these lives that were real, that were masculine, and yet they had a conversion and a time in their life where they merged their grittiness and their holiness together. And now we call them saints. And so that's sort of the backdrop of the book. It's doing hard things with God at the forefront, which is related to marriage and finances and all the things that become really tough in our life that are hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say I thought I'd done some hard things, and then I got married. And then some kids came along, and I've found more and more being asked of me. Yeah. And there's the choice of, right, getting up, saying yes to it, and figuring out how to get it done, or just to, I don't know, slink away, stay to myself, and let them figure it out for themselves. So I don't want to do that. Maybe sometimes I fall into that a little bit, but there's a great call on us to give of ourselves, to serve those, especially in our family, our wives or children, if we're blessed with them. How have you seen, you've talked about meeting with couples and with men and all that, when there seems to be this disconnect, and it could be about finances. That's where we see it a lot, but right where there's something that's very important to the wife. Maybe she's feeling the stress of the money, whatever it is. She's like, I want to do this thing. I want to get more serious about our finances. I want to figure it out, whatever it might be. And then the husband doesn't, just kind of right away say, oh, well, this is really important to you. Great. If you're important to me, that makes it important to me. Let's do this thing. When that breaks down, why do you think it does? What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the deeper question underneath. For women, the deepest question I think that they long for and want is a sense of security. And that's not financial security. I think a lot of guys misread that as, if I provide, I have more, I get my wife all the things, then there's a sense of financial security. In a woman's heart, security is a sense of safety, a sense of togetherness, unity, and to know that she's secure in that love of her husband, her kids, and is first in her husband's life. So that's security. So where a man might read it as financial security, that's not necessarily the case, right? Mm-hmm. For the man, though, the deepest question inside of him that's underneath the surface is he needs to believe that he has what it takes to accomplish the task at hand, to be adequate. And you mentioned it just a moment ago, like marriage is the hardest thing that you've probably ever attempted, and fatherhood. And so there are often times in our lives as husbands and fathers that we don't feel adequate. And so what we do is we automatically will navigate to the things that we feel adequate in, work or our leisure or hobbies or friendships. And yet the whole time is like, we want to feel adequate in our marriage and the things. That's where finances come in. We overcompensate. Oh, I'll figure out how to make us rich and do all these things. And the wife's like, I just want to be first in your life. So there becomes this tension, right? That's, I always say the most powerful words that a wife can tell her husband is, I believe in you. You have what it takes. And just really speak that into. More so like you have what it takes to enter into this marriage, to be the father, the husband. So there's the underlying sort of tension underneath, and the finances become sort of oftentimes the cork that pops off. We don't see eye to eye financially, and then there's all these underlying issues.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah. As you're saying all that, it's just convicting me. It's like, oh yeah, I'm doing that there. and thankfully, at least the ones I can think of right away, seemingly kind of small things, right? Like, when it's time to clean up the kitchen, I find other things to do other than like load the dishwasher. Cause I don't know. I fit maybe 2/3 the amount of dishes in there than my wife can. And it's just like, I just don't know what to do. So I'm going to do something else. So that makes a lot of sense. And golly, you're right, man. Like, can I do this? Am I adequate?
And I think with the finances, when things go south or they're not going well, or there's tension or overspending or lack of budget or not a financial plan, the guy begins to feel like he failed. And that's where men go, I'm a failure. I'm failing my family. So let me figure it out. So when we live out of that failure, we want to overcompensate. I'm going to read a book, watch YouTube, like you said. I'm going to figure out a solution out of this because I want to win. And the whole time, the wife just wants to be together on this plan. She wants a sense of unity and safety in it. I always say, like, say the light fixture breaks, the fan. And I look at it, my wife looks at it, and she just says, well, I'm going to call someone and fix it. And I always say, what I would like for you to say is, I believe that you can fix it. You know, like, I believe that you can fix that. And I want her to think that I can fix anything, right? I want her to believe that. But I also have to have the humility to say, I'll try to fix it. But if I can't fix it, I'm going to call a maintenance guy or contractor to come in and fix it. I know my limits. That's what happens in the finances is I want to believe that I can contribute, but at the same time, I have to be humble enough to say, I don't have all the answers. Let's do this together. So finances have a beautiful ability to bring unity in the marriage, but oftentimes it causes division because of those underlying issues that seem to be unresolved, you could say.
Yeah. I'd say what's one thing that's tricky with finances that maybe, I think makes it, we feel it really acutely, at least I have and do, of like, there's a number right there. So you might, in other ways of, does my wife feel loved, or am I being a good father or whatever, right? There's not some number that is staring you at in the face all the time. But with finances, we can see the bank account balance or the loan amount or whatever it is, and interpret that number as a score or judgment on us. So if it's higher, I'm doing well. If it's lower, I'm failing. And our financial reality does not affect our worth. It doesn't affect the quality of person or man that we are. But I think there's a real temptation there to view the bank balance as the score, our score of providing, of being a man, of being a husband.
Yeah, 100%. Can't you see how hard I'm working or what I'm doing? Or, I would say that the majority of couples that we meet with who are struggling in their marriage have plenty of money. So money doesn't solve the marital issue, right? So like if the money was simply the resolutional piece, that would be great, right? But it's not. Like, there's such a deeper need inside both man and woman for unity. And what we have found in our own life is that getting on the same page with money is actually helped us resolve other issues. My feeling of incompetency or failure to not provide as much as the number I have in my head, right? What is that number? Like, what's the number that's going to make me happy and her happy? Well, it's a make-believe. It's subjective, right? So we can't put value on that.
Yeah. Money has a way of, I don't know, magnifying, of taking what's happening in our relationship and just really kind of just taking it, magnifying it, making it bigger, helping us see it more. So if there's a little bit of tension or there's some disagreements or some mistrust or something, when it comes to handling the money, well, then that's going to come up. Or the other side, right? Trust, commitment, all this stuff, that'll come in how we handle our money too. It can be, it's one of the leading causes of separation, of divorce, of marital tension and strife. And it doesn't have to be. It can be a source of unity and togetherness, right? When we got married 11 years ago, we counted all the money, and we had a huge money fight on our honeymoon. Because we put the honeymoon on a credit card and it was due during the honeymoon, and we forgot to like set the thing up to pay it, and we're huge fight about it. And we're like, this is crazy. Like, we don't want this the rest of our life. This is not what we're signing up for. Yeah. And we had to figure it out, and it ended up, getting out of debt and learning how to budget and all that stuff. It really brought us together. And this thing that can drive so many couples apart, it was the unifying factor, was the glue, right? Because it put us on the same side of the table.
Yep.
Against the finances. Like, right, we're here to figure it out, to pay off that debt or to save up that down payment or whatever it is. It was us, not necessarily against the money, but we're on the team figuring out how to do this.
And the goal is unity, right? So you got to decide, like, do we want to be unified in our marriage or not? So do you raise kids by yourself? No, you raise them together. Do you have sex by yourself? No, you have sex together. You know, do you solve money issues by yourself? No, we solve them together. So it is about unity, right? We asked 2 really hard questions for these couples, engaged couples that we're mentoring, and marriage couples. They come in and say, you know, we're fighting about money. And we're like, it's not about the money. You know, like, let's go. Let's follow that down to what it's really about, right? You guys are disunified in some other, it's bringing up some other issues of whatever. And we'll ask 2 hard questions. Are you willing to unify so much that you're willing to have one account that you both could see and use, right? Makes sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of times couples are like, or no, right? Like, we like our own separate. They're like, well, it's kind of a sign of disunity. And I'm not saying that, like, that's a blanket statement. It can't work for some people, but, and then I say, have you guys decided an amount that you can spend without asking the other's permission? Right? Simple question. And they're like, no, that's really uncomfortable for us. We just like to do what we want individually. We don't want to be unified on those things, right? So you ultimately have to say, what's our greatest desire? Well, I want to be happy and unified in my marriage. Okay. Well, Holy Grit is doing the hard work to get there, to get to that unifying place. And so it's having those conversations around what money brings up. What are the issues? What are the incompetencies or fears that I feel as a man? I can be honest. That's not always easy to admit, but I think there's a lot of freedom in my wife hearing those things she can understand, you know? And at the same time, hearing her needs and desires. You know, my wife has never said to me, like, I want to be rich, famous, or wealthy. She just says, I want to be secure. I want to feel safe. I want to feel number one. And I'm like, she's never put a value or a number to that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Hopefully this makes sense and is clear enough. It stuck with me. So I guess it was a good class exercise. It was, what class was it? Some communications class maybe in college. And she hands out these papers to the class, and half the class is on, you know, this side of the issue, half's on this side. And it was something like, you know, there's like 100 like oranges or something. And what was it? One side wanted the oranges because I forget what it was, you know, they could, I don't know, like cure cancer or whatever. And then the other side needed the oranges because with those they could, I don't know, solve hunger or something like something crazy, but like very, very important. I should have these because it's so important.
2 moral dilemmas of equal value.
Yeah.
Right?
So we're arguing like the whole class about, you know, well, this is why we should have it instead of you and all this. But if you actually read the paper, right, like one side needed like the peel and the other side needed the orange juice, but we weren't communicating enough. We weren't actually sharing what we needed, what we were looking for. Instead, just putting ourselves first. Well, this is my plan. This is why it's going to work, why I want to do what I want to do. Instead of like figuring out, well, okay, well, what do you need in order to do the thing that you want to do? Well, here's what I'm looking for. Oh, we can both do it? This is great. And so I think there's often a disconnect where, right, none of it, I don't think anybody, unless they're crazy or something, wants to make their spouse unhappy or step on their dreams or shove them aside or anything like that. We just forget to investigate, forget to ask, and or just assume. We just assume, oh, well, they want the same thing I want, right? See, using money well, that means we're going to have a bunch of it and all that. When you're saying, right, the wife is going, no, it just means we're doing it together. We've got a plan. You know, we're going to be relatively secure and safe. That's what I'm looking for. And we just don't talk about it.
Yeah. And when there is unity, there's trust. So there's not bondage in that, you know. A lot of times, you know, people will interpret that as, well, you know, then I lose my freedoms, you know. And yeah, there is a sense of like, there's certain freedoms you lose when you get married. That's what you sign up for, right? I'm one flesh with this other person, but yet in that you've gained freedom through unity. So when you come on the same page with finances, there's trust that's built. And so there's certain things that the husband and wife look at each other and say, I trust you with that. And I trust you with that. And because we have built unity and trust, like, of course, I know that you're going to try to stay in budget and you're not going to overspend. And yeah, you budgeted this to buy this or that. And I trust you with that to make the decision. And, you know, so there becomes actually more freedom when you have unity than less. Absolutely. And a lot of times we interpret it as, if I just do my own thing, I actually have more freedom. And the reality is you actually have more bondage, like, because you become disunified with the person that you're married to that loves you the most. And we see that often, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. We wholeheartly recommend joint accounts. You know, right. You're sharing together. I mean, you said it fantastic, right? We don't, there's all these different things that we don't do alone. Why would our financial lives be separate? And again, yeah, we recommend what's that limit, right? When a purchase is over X, we talk about it first. Again, that's just it helps build that sense of trust, of togetherness, of unity. And what I find crazy is, and I'm not on there much, but I go on to Venmo to send somebody some cash for something or pay for something on Craigslist or whatever. And I'll, sometimes you can see the transactions if they're marked public, and I will see a spouse sending money to their spouse, right? A husband to a wife or a wife to a husband, like for this bill or for going to the movies. Or it's like, isn't it all just your money? It's crazy. Yeah. Just that, and it's just a sign of, right? Like, financially, we're no different than friends, than strangers or roommates, where the relationship which we're called to, that we've entered into, that we've chosen, is way deeper than that.
Yep. Yeah. And I, always find, like, if there's fights about money and there's disunity in one area of your marriage, there's probably disunity in other areas. There's lack of like real connection in other areas. My grandparents' generation, probably like yours, my grandma just got an allowance from my grandfather monthly, and when he died, like, she had no idea how much money they had or even how to access it. Like they never even like talked about it. But sort of a sign of probably other ways that there was some disunity in their marriage, and then now you have a generation where there's a lot more like dual working homes and, two incomes, and we're going to live two separate lives in our own home because it's my money, your money, my job, my career. And the whole point of marriage is like just bringing that together as one, like communicating. And it actually brings a lot more joy and freedom in your marriage. And that's what we really want. Like, no one gets married, right? Jonathan says, I can't wait in 10 years to be divorced. That's going to be really fun. Like, no one signs up for that ever. Like, I've never heard anyone say that. Everyone goes into marriage thinking, I want to be happy. I want to love this person. I want it to be fruitful and lifelong, right? And yet 5 years into their marriage, they're fighting about money and this is not what I got myself into, and I can't believe this, and I want to go back. I get in my corner and it becomes about me, instead of us, Yeah. For men, back to that question that you brought up at the very beginning, we do have to do some soul searching, maybe find some humility, let go of our pride, realize that we've made mistakes, that we don't have all the answers, that we don't need to solve this on our own. Like, this isn't not our issue to solve on our own. And there's a lot of freedom in asking our wives to be partners in that. We don't have to come up with a scam. I had a friend who just took this, like, one of those scam real estate classes because he thought he would pull his marriage out of this financial debt because they'd been bad with money, got into debt, and he was going to save the day, put on his cape, and then it just got him in worse debt, and you're just like, man, don't do that. Let's get to the issue at hand, luckily they're still together, but they're fighting really hard for it,
Yeah. So we talk about this. If there's folks listening, maybe there's even, I'm going to guess, maybe a couple of husbands whose wives are making them listen to this. We're going through, okay, I see this. Money is maybe revealing some of the disunity in our marriage. What's a practical first step that they can take to help identify what it is, or identify what it is in themselves that's holding them back from discovering and living out this unity?
Yeah. On the emotional side, there's things called money and emotions, right? Like what is the emotion that money brings up? Mm-hmm. How does it relate to the way I grew up, my family of origin? We find a lot in marriages that if you trace your family of origin, sort of the way you grew up, mm-hmm. what you absorbed, is related to a lot of areas in your life, the way you communicate, your sense of your security, money. Like, don't be afraid to look into your family of origin or the emotions that are connected to money and say, well, I saw my dad overspend, or I saw my parents struggle in poverty. And I told myself as a kid that wasn't going to happen to me. Like, if you're self-aware enough to kind of trace some emotional things back, mm-hmm. it could be very freedom, a lot of enlightening to say, wow, that is why I do that, or I act that way, or I think this way. And maybe I'd be open to kind of rewiring my mind a little bit through my faith and through Christ.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. That is where we start with everybody, is examining, we call it their money mindset. Just like, what do you think about money? What is money? And a lot of it isn't necessarily right or wrong, but in identifying and understanding and revealing so much, especially from the way we grew up or our past, but before we got married or whatever it is, we learned so much about ourselves. And I think a lot that we assume is just true about money, and then so we're handling money a certain way according to this way that we're seeing it, when our wife isn't, because she sees it slightly different. And so why does she do that? That doesn't make any sense. She's thinking the same thing about us. It's like, I always like to talk about it like, I call my wife, she's at the store getting groceries, go, oh, hey, I just remembered we're going to this thing. I want to make a cake for it. Can you grab stuff to make a cake? Yeah, sure. She comes home. I'm expecting to see, a bunch of eggs for egg whites and some strawberries and all. I'm going to make angel food cake, right? She brought home a chocolate box mix. I'm like, what do you do? What? I thought we were making cake. She's like, yeah, we are, of course. Right. We both understand that each one of those is cake, but we didn't communicate about it enough. I was assuming my cake was cake, period. And how could you not understand that? And now we're fighting about a dessert. And that's what happens with our money. We come at it from recognizable positions, but slightly different. And so then there's tension there. And so when we can understand that about ourselves, there's less tension just in ourselves and the way we're acting. We have a better idea of what's coming or why we're doing this, and so much more understanding of our spouse and how we can work together. So yes, it's very important to figure out ourselves so that we can make a gift of ourselves to our spouses.
Yeah, 100%. My wife grew up, never really thought about money. She lived in a secure home. Her parents were married, and she just never really thought. It doesn't stress her out, mm-hmm. and no reason to. My parents were divorced. I grew up in two single homes. Mm-hmm. My dad was my mom, and saw them struggle. And so I absorbed just stress with money, emotional, mm-hmm. wow, that's really difficult. It's hard. And we both brought that into our marriage, and didn't even know it. But it brought a lot of healing as we talked through it and got on the same page and leaned on each other. We're not called to carry it alone. We're mm-hmm. called to carry that together. And so in times where I might stress more, she's definitely, more trustworthy and not worried. And in times where she's doesn't understand maybe an investment or risking a little bit because she just never even thought about it. You know, I'm more like, here's sort of the picture. And you kind of paint that picture better together than apart. But there are some emotions. And I would say like even money with me has brought a chance for some breakthrough and some healing in my faith, some trust in the Lord more, you know, where I've wanted to trust in my own things. Because what I told myself is like, well, I'm never going to struggle with money. I'm just going to solve it because of what I didn't want to struggle the way I saw certain people struggle. And the reality is like, you know, it's not as easy as you could just make it out to be, right? So in our faith, that's the beauty, is that we can trust in the Lord and know that his providence is real and good, and he's never going to leave us abandoned.
Absolutely. Yes. He is the Father who loves us. I see it a lot with our kids, you know, they're asking for whatever, a present for their birthday or just for a glass of milk or whatever it is. And I'm always thinking about this, you know, that verse of, you know, like even you, I'm going to paraphrase, you know, like even you guys, like if your kid's asking for an egg, you're not going to give them a scorpion. Seems like kind of weird things to ask for and to give. But anyway, got it. And so I'm just like, oh yeah, like, you know, asking for an egg, asking for, you know, I'm like, even I know how to do this. But in understanding how God provides for us, how he's given us everything. Money really can be this tool that reveals our Father's goodness to us, that reveals our role to provide and to love, to help those in our charge. And there's a lot when we are handling it well, can be right. It can be this little canary in the coal mine for some of the things going on in our marriage, but it can also be this kind of reinforcing mechanism that helps us know that we're doing a good job, that can build trust, that can build confidence, and most importantly, build reliance on the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. Would agree to that.
As if a guy listening here is like, all right, man, okay, we got to do this. Sure, maybe I'll check out Waltland for the money side, for this kind of understanding more about this call as men, about developing this holy grit, as you call it. How can they learn more about that, the work that you do, get a copy of the book, all that?
Yeah, Holy Grit's easy, just holygrit.org or Amazon or Ave Maria. But, you know, the book's written for these saints to inspire us to be the man God created us to be. They did hard things, and men are attracted to that. One of the hardest things we'll do is to engage our wife, our kids. I remember someone telling me when I was trying to figure out my vocation as a college student, they said, you know, maybe think about the vocation that's going to challenge you to holiness the most. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Why would I want to do that? You know, he's like, well, do you want to go to heaven? I was like, yeah, I kind of do, I think. And I remember praying about that and thinking, what marriage is definitely probably the thing that kind of challenged me the most. And it is in a good way. It's hard, it's difficult, but that's where men come alive. We engage in hard things, right? That's why we love to just defend and fight and, you know, like all those things. But, you know, saints teach us also how to merge our faith into this grittiness. And so each chapter is built with these saints that kind of show us and model for us what it means to be a man, what it looks like. And I learned a lot from these guys, like researching them and writing about them. I use stories of my own life. So if you want to know like how to move forward, even with the money thing, like how to engage and be more proactive and intentional and do hard things and yet grow in your faith, it's a good book to kind of like motivate you to do that.
Fantastic. Again, you can find that holygrit.org or probably wherever you like to buy your books. And you are the host of the Paul George Show, the podcast, and that's available everywhere podcasts can be found.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today, Paul. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, Jonathan, this is good, man. Let's do it again. Reach out anytime. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, God bless.
All right, you too.